Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, and today I wanted to give you a gentle reminder about how important it is to keep all of your container gardens fertilized, particularly now that we are in the latter half of July and it's really hot, it's super humid here in North Carolina. I think it's hot everywhere across the planet right now, and your container plants really do need to have an extra dose of NPK on a pretty regular basis. I usually say once a month, because remember, every time you water, the nutrients are flowing through those drainage holes. So unlike in-ground plantings, your containers are going to need to have extra fertilizer added throughout the growing season. So I always recommend using these fish-based liquid fertilizers. And actually, if you're opposed to using fish, you can use a kelp meal. The difference between this and the fish emulsions is the rate of fertilizer is significantly less. In fact, this is only 0.3, 0.25, and 0.15. So you're gonna have to use kelp meal a lot more regularly in comparison to these liquid fertilizers that are basically a part of a byproduct of the fish industry. Let me show you a little bit more about the 4 that I happen to have on hand just from randomly finding them at garden centers and box stores. So the Alaska fish fertilizer is probably the most commonly available. This I actually found at Walmart, and I've used this for many years. The critical component here is recognizing the NPK. That's much higher in nitrogen and lower in phosphorus and potassium. So if you're fertilizing things that are fruiting, like peppers, eggplants, tomatoes, this might not be the right formulation for applying now in the middle of summer. This is great when you're trying to get lots of leafy green new growth, like early summer season, getting plants established. But now that I'm trying to make sure that my plants, are setting fruit, this is not the right formulation. Now, I mentioned the kelp meal, and you can see this is a much lower dose. I am going to go ahead and use this up today because I have like 80 pots, and I try to not hold these over year after year. Now, here was a new one to me, and I like these containers because you can sort of squeeze out the right amount for the watering can that you're using. I've never actually had fish fertilizer in this kind of a container. I haven't opened this one, and you can see the nitrogen is 5%, the phosphorus is 1%, and the soluble potash or potassium is 1%. So that's exactly the same ratio, just a different container, different brand, as the Alaska fish fertilizer. So these are actually going to be better for me to wait, and I can start using these on my cool season vegetables that are just starting to germinate. The one that I'm going to use primarily today is this one from Brown's, and this is actually from the Outer Banks. And the main reason I'm using this is because it has a higher phosphorus number, and that's the number you're wanting to focus on for fruit set. So 231 NPK. And I actually did overwinter this from last year. I got this at Fifth Season Gardening, which is a great hydroponic shop that's sort of in North Carolina and Virginia. To overwinter it, well, I put it in my shed for the winter, but then this spring it was really gunky. I actually just added about, a 1/4 container of water so that it would be more liquid. And now I'm just adding this to my watering can and basically applying it to every single pot that I have in my garden. So the reason that I focus on using these low ratio NPK liquid organic fertilizers, well, for one thing, I'm trying to stimulate microbial activity both in the ground and in my container plants. So no need to bring in synthetic fertilizers like a 10-10-10. I've also learned over the years that those higher ratios of NPK really don't get absorbed efficiently by the plants. So you are better off using a fertilizer with lower numbers and just applying it more regularly. a few years ago, like 10 years ago, I was preparing for a photo shoot and the garden was like 9 months old. And I just hit everything with Miracle-Gro, like hose on sprayer, watered the heck out of everything. I had pepper plants that were like 8 foot tall but didn't set a single fruit. And that's because it was too high in nitrogen. Since then, I've learned a lot more about organic gardening and really soil health and soil science, and trying to make sure that you cultivate healthy living soil with microbes. Instead of feeding the plant directly with a synthetic fertilizer, you're actually feeding the soil so that the plants will then more effectively absorb nutrients from the ground. So that's really my basis for why I'm a devoted organic gardener. In the long run, it's more efficient, it's less expensive, and my yields are significantly higher. Also happens to be a lot lower maintenance because I don't need to apply this fertilizer every single week like it's recommended when you use a Miracle-Gro product. Now, in saying that, because we're in the middle of July, I also don't recommend applying a synthetic granular coated fertilizer, because those are often going to be releasing NPK for a long duration of time, sometimes 4 months, 6 to 8 months, 9 to 12 months. In July, you aren't needing to have a fertilizer that's going to continue to deposit fertilizer as late as October and November, right? Frost is going to hit. You don't want your plants to have a lot of tender new growth. So this is not the season to be applying something like Osmocote. I recommend staying away from Osmocote to begin with, because again, that's actually going to suppress microbial activity, not enhance it. So if you follow my instructions, you know I do everything organic, and the garden and all of my containers are really lush and beautiful and productive and bountiful. And I really think that a big part of that is just using these really simple to apply, they'll never burn your plants, organic formulations of NPK. All right, the process for mixing the fertilizer is super easy. And no, I don't measure. I'm actually a terrible baker. I always use this big blue watering can that I don't know the brand name of. It's Japanese, I think, and they really missed the mark by not putting their name on the can itself, but it's like a 2 gallon, and I've taken the rows off so it's easy to pour. And right now I'm gonna use the Brown's fish fertilizer. So I'm just gonna add kind of a generous helping. Remember, I've already diluted this a little bit with water, so that's why I add so much to the pot. And now I'm just gonna take a hose, fill it all the way up to the top, and I will apply it to all of these containers surrounding me. So one of the biggest advantages of using this kelp fertilizer is the simple fact that it doesn't smell bad. In fact, it's pretty much odorless. So here on the front patio of our Airbnb, I don't want it to smell like fish. I'm going to use this kelp meal for all of these large containers that are foodscaped, growing things like eggplants, sweet potatoes, peppers, and tomatoes, mixed in with beautiful, colorful summer annuals. This is exactly what it'll take to give them what they need to make it through the beginning of the dog days of summer. Well, I hope this video will be a helpful reminder to all of you to be sure to keep up with fertilizing your container gardens through the heat of the summer. And if you haven't yet tried any of these ocean-based fertilizers, that you'll be willing to give them a try. I really don't think you'll be disappointed. Also, I hope you will subscribe if you haven't yet for more practical gardening advice right here from my Zone 7 Central North Carolina garden. And be sure to stay tuned for a full comprehensive container gardening tour that I will post tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.